When you meet people in Hawaii or out and they're like, "Oh, Harry, what do you work on?" Do you say you're an Uber driver?
No, I definitely don't say I'm an Uber driver because it's also not really accurate anymore. But it depends on the person I'm talking to. If they're younger or youngish or in the digital media scene, I might say I'm a blogger. But even that isn't really kind of like what I do. Sometimes I tell people I run an online media business. It kind of depends on the person who's asking. And, sometimes if they're really old, I might just say I'm a writer or something like that, since they may not know what a blogger is.
That's interesting based on the age group, how we change our answers.
Well, it's sort of based on age group, but also potential involvement in tech or media or some other, digital landscape.
Do you get recognized by Uber drivers?
I've been recognized one time randomly on the streets where I was crossing the street and some lady rolled her window down and she was like, "Hey, you're that YouTube guy, huh?"
I wonder if you could say that to everyone you meet in general, and then I bet you'd have a pretty high hit rate. I'm not trying to belittle your accomplishment. Sorry, I hope you don't feel that way.
Oh no, I'm already belittled.
I literally was thinking that all these Uber drivers and Lyft drivers would be like, "Dude, you're the rideshare guy. You're Harry the rideshare guy."
I definitely have a feeling because when I get into Ubers and Lyfts, especially, I've had people recognize me. They say, "Oh, I took your course," or "Oh, I was hoping I was going to pick up Harry, the rideshare guy." So that stuff, I wouldn't say it happens all the time, but it's definitely happened a handful of times. But I feel like sometimes, especially early on when I was really like, out there pimping and promoting my site, telling every driver about it, a lot of them would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I think I heard of that site," and I'm pretty sure that maybe they heard about some other rideshare site, or they weren't like, "Yeah, I know the rideshare guy." They're like, "Oh yeah, I think I've seen your stuff before," but I'm pretty sure they hadn't.
Did you have a driver say, "Hey, I hope you get in my car. I've been waiting for you to get the rideshare guy to get in my car"?
What has happened a few times is that people, and this actually happened with delivery orders too, because I place a lot of delivery orders. I'm really lazy, and it's also part of my job to research the delivery apps. So I've had drivers or couriers who say, because they see a little picture and it says Harry, or it's just a name that says Harry, and when they roll up, they see that it's me, the rideshare guy, and they're happy, and they say, "Oh, I was hoping it was going to be you." Not that they've been, driving every day in the hopes of meeting me. There's kind of a big difference, right?
Do you wish you would have picked like Instagram models or like another category of people?
Yeah, I wish I would have picked the points guy because I would much rather be traveling around the world on luxurious jets. And he just wrote an article about his Black Centurion card, which is like $5,000 a year. I would much rather be doing a sexier industry, but at the same time, you can kind of there's definitely a bit of luck involved, and I'm not complaining about this industry, but yeah, if I could switch places with the points guy, I might.
I mean, you still can. There's no limit on points. I guess it's just figuring out an angle that that you could take that's unique.
Right. And I think that's kind of like the whole challenge and as I was building my business, the rideshare guy, and, dabbling in all of these other online businesses, that's what I was trying to figure out. It's like, hey, because I started, we met back in the day. I don't know if you know, but I started with personal finance blogging. So I owned a few personal finance sites, and I feel like I would always look out there and look at these other big personal finance sites and think to myself, like, these guys are not that great of writers. They're not doing anything special. They're not doing anything really that different than me. I think I have good information. They have good information, but for whatever reason, they're getting millions of page views and I'm getting hundreds. So what's
What do you think the difference was?
Well, I think the difference in that case specifically was timing. What I kind of noticed in the personal finance space was that a lot of those early bloggers that had a lot of success, their content was good, but it wasn't anything that was, one of a kind. I think it was just they were in the right place at the right time. They started blogging about personal finance when there were only a few of them out there. And as more and more people started to search for it and look for it online, they were kind of some of the first people doing it and doing a good job of it, not to discredit what they were doing. But since they were first, it helped them out.
I guess I had this realization this weekend, and I'll be candid, I was a little buzzed. So when you have an idea.
That's when a lot of the best realizations happen, or in the shower.
Or the stupidest, where people like, I wrote it down. I was like, man, this is the greatest idea I've ever thought of. And then I was rereading it yesterday, and I was like, that's still pretty good. But basically, there's this thing in maybe MBA talk, like TAM, like the total addressable market or total available market. And I was realizing it or thinking about it from a product business standpoint that each business or thing you work on has a capacity for marketing for how many people you can be reaching, which I guess is total available market. Yeah. And so it was just interesting to think about within the Uber driver space, your addressable market of capacity, right? And the same thing goes for points, right? And I guess what another component I didn't even realize till we're talking about it is there's a lot more people that want points, but not only that, those people have a lot more money potentially than the Uber drivers who are doing this as a part-time or maybe full-time gig.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's actually a really good couple blog posts on the early Uber days where there was this kind of semi-famous NYU professor, I believe his name is Aswa Damodaran, something like that. And he's kind of well known for he's like the valuation expert. And he did a really lengthy blog post on Uber's valuation in the early days and kind of looked at the total addressable market and kind of like what he thought they should be valued at, and basically determined that they were way overvalued. Maybe at the time the private investors were valuing them at 20 to 30 billion, and he was saying if you look at the market size and all this, it should be a lot lower. And Bill Gurley, who is this famed VC from Benchmark and very well known and well respected, kind of wrote a counter post to that and basically said that you're looking at it completely wrong. You're judging the total available market on the taxi market. Uber is going to go in, take all the taxi market and grow the pie, right? So if you are just looking at that initial total available market, you're kind of missing the whole picture. And I guess I would say in some ways he was right, although now Uber's share price is way down. And so maybe less right, but still right.
I read that. There's also a book, E-Boys, about Bill Gurley. That was their early days in Benchmark. Really interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I haven't read that book, but I do like to follow him. I think he's pretty knowledgeable. And fun fact, at a party one time, I introduced myself to him, and he claimed that he knew me, but I don't think he actually did.
Did he say, that's just something you should say to everyone. Because no matter what you say it to them, you remembered it. You're like, oh my God, he knew who I was.
Yeah, well, so this one time I wrote an article for Forbes, and it was about how seniors were flocking to Uber. And this was early days, and it was kind of a fun article about how cool Uber was and how it was enabling all these transportation options for seniors who weren't getting to doctor appointments and stuff like that. And I remember he shared it and retweeted it because he was a big investor in Uber. And so I think he knew my name from that and among a few other things maybe. But so when I met him at the party, it was somewhat recently after he had retweeted that. And, he was kind of my, man crush in the VC and tech world at the time, and maybe still is. So I kind of remembered that.
Dude, that's awesome. And let's break down how you actually pitched to get on this show, because I think it was you made it a no-brainer for me to be interested. Obviously, we know each other and we're friends, which changes the dynamic a little bit. But I thought your pitch, even as a non-friend or friend, was phenomenal. And then I want to break down how you do your PR. And I had a friend literally today, one of a good buddy of mine named Alan, had a new product come out, and he said, I couldn't get any PR whatsoever. And you sent me this PR machine that you've created, or PR system. And so I actually want to talk about it and talk how you would approach Alan's product from a PR perspective. So let's go over your pitch to actually get on the show, because I think a lot of people want to get an influencer, to do something with them, or want to get on someone's show, or want to get a blog post, or want to get a partnership. So I don't know. I'm going to pull up the email. Do you have the email?
I actually have the email. It's funny that you mentioned that. And we totally did not plan this, because I was hoping I was going to actually bring it up. I was like, we should dissect the pitch that I sent to you. Because one of the kind of unique things I feel about in my position is that I'm very well known in the rideshare industry. And I get a lot of pitches, as I'm sure you do. But I also don't want to miss out on a pitch. Like this morning, I got a pitch on LinkedIn. Someone added me on LinkedIn. And I just I spotted a few things on his profile, and so I decided to quickly message him. And a few minutes later, I was actually, he connected me with the CEO of LAX Airport, and I was chatting with her about a potential consulting project. So it was sort of I get pitched a lot, but I feel like I kind of have a sixth sense for who to talk to and who not to talk to that maybe we can dissect. But I think a good starting place is what I emailed to you.
Yeah, let's pull it up. So I have the email, and so one preface I want to think, because we launched FAM a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was a good reminder for me was I was trying to work with a lot of new people. And if you're trying to work with someone new, it's really hard to go into a pitch right away, is something I took away from that. Because I would go to these people, be like, hey, we kind of maybe know each other. Here's what I need you to do for me. Yeah. And it just didn't feel right. So it was a reminder where if there's something coming out in your business, or you're wanting to work with someone, I really think you have to do something to help them or build a relationship month, 6 months, a year, 6 years.
I'm totally stealing this from somewhere, and I'm sorry, I can't remember where I heard it, but I feel like you definitely have to lay the foundation for asking something at a later date. And it's not that you and I became friends because I was like, oh, I'm going to ask Noah for something in 6 months, but I was thinking, I think in general, right? If you might have a very low success rate of asking people kind of moment of, but I think it's more important to just build these relationships for that future product or that future ask that you might have. And where it gets to the point where, it isn't so much, when it doesn't feel like a huge ask in the future, that's kind of how I think you did a good job. But when you hit enter on that email and you're like, oh God, I hope they say yes to me, you know that you probably haven't done enough to build a relationship. Like when I sent that email to you, I was like, wow, this is gonna be really tough for Noah to say no to me, I think, at this point. And at
You
this
knew that?
well, I had a feeling, I had a good feeling about it, and when I sent it, but I also, it's because I've met you a few times and I feel like I knew you well. But also at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to like I knew I was going to be providing a lot of value to your audience, and I think that there are a lot of people who you could interview that would provide value to your audience. But if I'm like putting pressure on you to do it, you're probably going to pick me before someone else, right? It's like everyone has a million different priorities that they could do. There's probably a million different people you could eventually interview on this show, but who are you going to interview first?
Probably your homies. I mean, the two things I want to just take a step back on. If people are trying to meet people, one of the best ways that I found, even to connect from the first time, we met at a conference and we've had a lot of iced tea together. You know that, eat tacos, drink a lot of iced tea. I think the two things that have helped me though connect is either A, give someone money. And I've used that as and it's not a lot. You could go and say, hey, can I sponsor like this small thing of yours? Or can I donate? Or can I contribute?
I see what you mean.
And what I found is that they're like, oh, this person's serious. And they're not asking me for anything. And they're willing to take me a little more at a higher status. So that's a way that I've connected. The other thing that you kind of made me reflect on, do you have the person's phone number? And I think there's something there where as a relationship level, if you actually care to connect with someone else, you have their phone number so you can text them about things. So I do think that made it, you didn't give me money yet, but I think you did buy me the lunch one time.
I do. It's funny that you actually said, give me money, because I guess I haven't thought about it that way in the past, but I'm a big sort of proponent of like small investments now. Like I don't think I've ever gone to lunch, dinner, anything in the past 5 years and not offered to pay, not offered to buy. I kind of joked around recently, like I was when all my wife's friends were in residency, because my wife is now a OBGYN resident, I would always be buying them drinks, always be paying for dinner. And I would kind of joke with my friends. It's like, I'm making an investment right now. When they're doctors in the future, surgery doctors and, all these fancy doctors making hundreds of thousands, like I want them to remember me as the guy who was like always buying them $12 drinks back in college when they invite me onto their yacht in the future. So, it's not like I'm like doing it only because of that, but you can kind of imagine that there's like, if you look at it analytically, there's like small things you can do now that sort of have outsized returns in the future. And I'm always looking for stuff like that, maybe because I used to be an engineer and think about it analytically.
Bro, I feel like I got used. Like for like a $25 lunch, now it's we're gonna promote. No, I don't feel used at all. I think I think people are probably wondering, and then we'll go into your email and then we'll go into your PR strategies. How do you connect with that other person? I think it's almost tiring to hear that shit. Like, oh, how do I connect? Or just one thing that we've done that seemed to be working is just go write about these people and how they've impacted you, or write about recommending them. So one of the things for Shopify is we've written about different businesses that we recommend, either partners or products, and that's made it a lot easier to be like, hey, we've promoted you guys a bunch. Here's something we're starting to work on. Is this something now we can talk about? Because it was a way to connect in a way that we just focused on benefiting them to start.
I like that. And, I just want to make sure that the audience gets at least like one key takeaway, where they can just like use that and stand out from 90% of the rest. So if people stop listening at this point right now, I will say that giving someone money, I like that strategy. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. When someone emails me and says that they just left a podcast review, or that even if they say that they're a big fan, oh, I just left you an Amazon review. And so when you are an author, like, oh man, I need those Amazon reviews. I just bought your book and left an Amazon review. My book is $9.99 in Amazon, like you will literally stand out from 99% of the pitches I get if you spend $10. If you leave a free iTunes review, you'll stand out from 95% of people. If you leave a comment on an article, I just left a comment and shared, your article on Twitter, like you're starting to stand out, and doing more than what most people are doing.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed lately is when I'm trying to get free products, because I'm a social media influencer. Yeah. that's the joke. I just tell them that I bought their product. And that's actually like, I just hit up people, be like, hey, I bought your product. I really liked it. I want to work with you to promote it. I'm not for free.
Well, because it's hard to say no to those people. I mean, I kind of have been doing this little experiment on and off for the past few years when I try new products. If their founder emails, if it's a really early product and their founder emails me or something, I always ask for swag. just to see what they'll say. And 9 out of 10 times they say yes to me. Like I'll buy this tiny little, I bought Nerd Wax once, and they emailed me and asked me about the product. And I replied back to them. I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. You guys got any swag or something like that? And they sent me like some t-shirts, because it's hard for them to say no in that position. Not that you're abusing it, but you can kind of use that mindset, I think, when you start providing real value to others, and when you want to get on Noah's show.
Okay, so step one, if you want to work with any company or any person, it sounds like be a little strategic, a month ahead, 6 months ahead, a year ahead. Do different activities or figure out different activities that would help them elevate or help you stand out, from money to writing positive reviews to buying their products. It doesn't have to be money. It could also be just helping them things that they're working on, or even referring a customer if you can't be a customer yourself. Now that you've gotten someone, they kind of maybe know who you are. Let's break down your pitch, because I think this was just good, and it's people are going to be listening, so we have to try to walk them through it. But maybe at a high level, like how did you structure it to make it effective that you knew I was going to say yes?
Sure. So this is the pitch entitled "Yo Man," right? Is that the one we're looking at?
Yeah, I have it open. So I was just
So basically, I think subject title, pretty simple, casual, just something that kind of, I didn't put a ton of thought into this, just something that's kind of like casual and friendly. Yo, man, since I know you, I think we're friends. And so, something casual. And it looks like the first line, I kind of said, hope Austin's treating you well, still searching for a bike ride partner since we had met up before and done a bike ride. So, obviously, like I knew that you had moved to Austin. So I wanted to, not make it seem like we haven't chatted in forever, but just something that a little bit's like, hey, I kind of know what's going on in your life right now. It's not like we haven't talked in a year or two. And then I also realized, a while ago, we had chatted about me doing a YouTube video for your channel. And I think it was when you were really looking to push into YouTube, and for whatever reason, maybe it, I think I turned something in, it wasn't a good fit, or you guys forgot about it, or never ended up posting it. Not a big deal. I'm a content creator myself, so I totally understood it. But at the same time, I did do some work for you guys, and I kind of was like, all right, this is a good opportunity. I want to come on Noah's podcast. I'll mention it and say, hey, here's a way that you can make it up to me. Kind of. I think I put a
guilt.
Smiley face, right?
A little Jewish guilt on me, man.
Right. But at the same time, I did submit some video to you guys, and it was never used. And so I sort of just used like a little bit of a guilt trip against a friend at the same time, where I know I'm able to provide a lot of value. So the next part is kind of like where the real pitch is. And it's kind of like, I guess slightly selfishly, like I get a lot of questions from friends and bloggers and people who want to know what we do to work with the media. And I felt like going on your show was the perfect forum for me to talk about how we do it and how I get it all done, so that in the future, when people ask me, I can just point them to your show. So I think that it is mutually beneficial for everyone. And we have a page on my website on the Rideshare Guy, which we can link to, that's basically, or we call it Around the Web. And we don't do it anymore, but we used to add every single time we got quoted, linked, featured, or whatever. And you can see just by looking at it, there's literally like hundreds on one page, and these are only the ones my VA has written down. And so that's really kind of what I laid out to you. It's like, hey, Noah, I've been, quoted, featured in the media over 2,000 times. Here's some quick proof that you can look at, and I want to share this with your audience. And if you're up for it, all you need to do is say yes. Make it really easy for you to say yes. That's the short part of the email. And then I basically laid out a script of what we can talk about in the podcast, because I'm a podcaster myself. And I know that, if I'm going to interview someone, you want to do a good job researching what they're doing, and you want to make sure that they know what the hell they're talking about, and that you're going to provide, have an interesting interview or whatever it might be. So that's kind of the secondary part of the email, which I separated with a little, I guess like 10 dashes, which I like doing in long emails to people, which is like a small little hack or trick. So you look at kind of the short email, and then it's like, okay, if you're interested, now here's like all the other crap, which I suspect you didn't read all of it, but you kind of you started going through it, and you're like, damn, this guy's pretty thorough. If I do ever want to interview him, I literally have a script right here.
So I did read the top part, and then through your bottom section, I think what was interesting about it was that you made it really easy. Like, hey, here's things that are unique that you're probably not hearing other places that your audience would enjoy. And you made it really easy for me to, it was a little bit dense in words, but it was easy. I think one thing I want to take a step sideways on here is this a template you use, or did you write this just for getting on this show?
So this was actually just for your show. And the reason why I put a lot of extra time into it was because I was pretty sure you were going to say yes. So I didn't feel like there was going to be any wasted time or effort. If we didn't know each other as well, and I thought you were still like the best venue for this interview, I probably wouldn't have done as much work. And it's kind of how I like to look at it. I like to look at it as like a slider. Like, if I'm going to do the bare minimum, maybe it's I tweet you ahead of time. If I'm going to do a little bit more work, maybe I send you an email and a tweet a month in advance. If I'm going to, really plant the seeds, maybe 6 months in advance, I send you a gift or whatever it might be. I don't know. I'm just sort of using that, but it's like you can sort of see the more invested you want to be or the better opportunity you think it is, the more work you might do up front, or the longer the pitch you might do.
And I'll tell you, the reason I asked that is because even myself, not even, but I do the same thing where if I'm reaching out to someone and I really want to get them, like how much time am I actually putting into it? And sometimes I have to even remind myself, like, shit, I should be putting even more time in, because this is not a short or light thing.
Yeah. And so to be frank, like you're one of the podcasts that I subscribe to. So I don't listen to every episode, but I do listen to episodes. The most recent one I listened to was on a hike in Hawaii. It was the Super Bowl champion guy, Lombardi or something like that. So, I actually do listen to your show. And frankly, like for the podcast that I really want to go on, I'll actually listen to 1 or 2 episodes, leave a review in iTunes, and then reach out, right? And that's a bit of work, and it might not work with 100 podcasts that you want to go on. But if you target 5 or 10 and you listen to podcasts anyways on a weekly basis, it's really not that much effort.
Do you have a hit list of shows that you're aiming for? And then you start planting some seeds and investing and be like, oh, this is stuff I want in the future?
So I do that a lot with the media. So frankly, I don't do a ton of podcast interviews. The last time I did a round of podcast interviews was when we launched our course, I think, or maybe my book a few years ago. But these days, I feel like the media has really helped my business grow. And I was just at this conference, FinCon, which and is a personal finance conference for bloggers. Super fun. You weren't there this year, which was a bummer. But one of the things that I feel like really I noticed was that a lot of people are not doing some of these most basic media strategies. Like anytime I would bring any of this up, no one was doing like any of the 50 things I was doing. So
what's some of the basic stuff that you think most people, like the 80-20 that most people should be doing?
So for example, like with journalists especially, if you're looking to get media, like they all are on Twitter. And I guess this works really well with journalists or people that you're reaching out to, like kind of like what we talked about, providing some level of value, providing something that, from their perspective, they're going to value even a little bit, like a small social share, for example. Like reporters are all on Twitter. This is one of the reasons why I love using Twitter with reporters, because literally you're not a real journalist if you're not on Twitter. And so you can kind of get a hold of a lot of these people, or they might see it, or you can interact with them, you can follow them, you can like them, you can comment on their statuses or comment on their actual articles. And so, for example, if you want to get into like one of the specific things we do a weekly roundup of news stories every week, and we feature, let's say, 3 to 5 different reporters every week. Someone who wrote this story on Uber and this story on Lyft or whatever it might be. And then at the end of the month, I actually will have my VA go in and she tweets out all those articles. So she'll say, hey, just like a normal share, like at Noah, at AppSumo, and then share the article, like a pretty generic share. And then we might also, so now they might see our name once. And then if they do, once we feature them in our roundup, we send another tweet that lets them know, like kind of in the week after they were featured, like, hey, at Noah, we featured you in our latest news roundup. And then we link to that article. So now it's sort of like we're kind of playing on the fact that like everybody loves to be featured, right? Everybody, like, who the hell is this rideshare guy? But he featured me. Cool. So now that kind of, just like gets them a little bit happy. And one thing I've sort of seen about not only journalists, but everyone likes to hear that they're doing a good job. Like when readers email me and tell me I'm doing a great job, that makes me feel good. So that's sort of what we're building on there. And then at the end of the month, we'll actually go in. I use a tool. It's a Gmail plugin that there's a free option or a paid option called Mail Merge, where you can basically send an email and add certain customization fields. So similar to the pitch that I sent you, I'll customize a few different things. So the first name, so it'll say, hey, Noah. and each reporter will get an email that says, hey Noah, whatever their first name is, and then it says something to the effect of, we've been following your stuff for a while, and we just featured your latest story on, and I just do a very casual title for the story, so it's not something super spammy like on the rise and fall of Uber and Lyft. That would be really weird, that you would never write in an email to your friend, but it would just be like, hey, I featured your story on Uber's latest earnings last week, right? Super casual, but it shows that I read your article. And then, we try to provide some value without asking for anything. So it's sort of like, I know that a lot of reporters want to be connected with drivers. They want to know what's going on in the industry. They want to know about potential stories. So we sort of offer a bunch of those things up to them. And I don't ask for anything in that email. I just sort of provide all that info to them and then leave my contact info in the hopes that they'll reach out to me in the future, or that my name is now in their head if they have a future story on Uber or Lyft, and kind of like build that relationship.
Well, one thing you did in reading your outline, which made it really easy to talk about, is like one of my questions that I was thinking about. I'm like, well, who cares, right? Like, so, newspapers are dying. There is online news, right? There's these different online articles, and now you have some journalists who know you. What's the value in actually getting press and that? But I'll let you answer the question. Like, what's the value even doing any of this stuff?
Well, I think that that's actually a pretty good question, because if you go out and pay a PR firm, they're going to tell you, oh, you're going to get tons of brand awareness. Well, what the hell does brand awareness mean, right? Unless you're, one of these mega companies running, like a car company running commercials all over the place. Like, I don't think brand awareness really matters for the typical blogger or the small entrepreneur. So what I really like is what I've seen is that people are willing to pay thousands of dollars for links from high quality sites. And so I'm not an expert in SEO, but usually when people are willing to pay thousands of dollars for something, I know it's pretty damn valuable, right? So if I can get some of those similar links, so when I'm working with the media, I'm trying to establish these relationships, but at the end of the day, I'm really trying to get links back from their site to mine, and I'm trying to get them to mention me by name and my site. So, and then of course, like with a link, depending on the outlet, if it's a really big one, or the more that they feature you, if a whole article is about you, you might actually get some traffic from it. So in my first year of running the Rideshare Guy, we got kind of our first feature of just me on Wired, and they basically did a whole article about me and my site and how we were helping out Uber and Lyft drivers. And I still remember to this day, because the site crashed, but we got over 10,000 page views in one day, and it's still very, ranks very highly up there. And in addition to all the SEO benefits, which are, hard to quantify, but we know that they're valuable.
I've noticed, and everyone says it, literally everyone says it, is like, I want to create value. I want to send something valuable to people. Our software is valuable. And I was like, well, if it's so valuable, why isn't no one buying it? And I think that's part of the problem sometimes with wanting to get featured, or wanting to get press, or wanting to get on a podcast, is people are saying, yeah, I can come and be on your show and be super valuable to your guests, but it's so transparent. They're just trying to get something selfish for themselves. Yeah. So I think it is interesting. How do you know it's actually valuable for the other person versus just the totally selfish, like, this is exactly what I want for me?
I mean, I think honestly, I think you're right. I don't know if there's any way to get around that. I think like a lot of these things are a bit selfish at the end of the day, right? I'm doing this whole media strategy. I'm not doing it to help reporters. That's kind of like the secondary effect. That's the secondary benefit for them. The main benefit, to be frank, is like for me. I'm doing this for me because I know that if I get a bunch of links, this is going to help my site. It's going to build my traffic. But at the same time, I know that reporters, for example, they're strapped on time. They're strapped on cash. They're strapped for, a lot of things. A lot of reporters actually have two different emails. One for generic pitches and one for friends, or one for people they know or sources that they like and things like that. So when you really get into their mindset, you can imagine that this is really going to help them in one way, that let's say you have a new product or a new company and you're trying to pitch a reporter. If you send them a pitch that has everything that they might need, kind of like what I sent to you, that makes it as easy as possible for them to do their job, they might still get 10 of those that are all like that, but you're increasing your chances of them selecting you by helping them, right? If you're a reporter and you have to write 2 stories a day and you get a pitch that has all of the info you need about a new company that's launching, that's expanding, that, could potentially be a headline on TechCrunch, and it has a customer that you can talk to. They even list the competitors in the pitch, because, like a good journalist isn't just going to write a fluff piece about some company. They're going to say, hey, they've got competitors and here's what their competitors are doing. Give them all that information. And it actually like not only is going to make your pitch stand out, but it makes their job easier. And I think that's what makes them more likely. It's just kind of so you are providing value to them maybe secondarily, but it makes it easier for them to pick.
There's a few other things in your strategies, and it sounds like there's different pieces. I'm going to highlight just a few of them, but I think what would be actually the most interesting, because I know what I'd be imagining as the listener is like, let's do it. Let's do real ones. Let's do not, you already have your stuff, which everyone's like, yeah, what about me? So a few of the ones that you said, and I'm just going to speak through them real quickly, is Haro. I think most people today know Haro. It's where reporters put out requests. So one thing I think you did that I liked is you filter it if there's a keyword. So I think that's really smart. You put media badges on for social proof.
Well, let me just give you one quick example on the Haro, if you don't mind, because I think this kind of just highlights. So the third thing I told you is I also find them on Twitter if they give their name and outlet, and I find them on Twitter and I let them know on Twitter. I just at them, hey, at Noah, I just replied to your Haro request looking for someone to talk about Uber earnings calls. I wrote the book on this thing. Let me know. That's all I do. And I actually just replied to a Haro request this morning, and the guy followed me after I sent that. I don't know if he's replied back to my email yet, but these guys on Haro get like hundreds of requests. So you can imagine just by taking 5 seconds and going to Twitter and sending them a quick little message, they now are seeing your name in 2 places. So that's all I do right there.
One thing, have you tried messaging them on Instagram as well?
I haven't, but that would be probably a good strategy for maybe, if you're reaching out to influencers or someone who's, more, using Instagram, or I guess even a lot of these reporters I notice are on Instagram, and they're probably not getting bombarded as much on Instagram with pitches as they are on Twitter.
I've been doing the Instagram more to communicate with people, even more than email. And the response rate is much, much higher so far.
Yeah. I will even say that I totally believe that, because I'm going to give the secret out right now. Like, I tend to check my Twitter very frequently, and I tend to check Instagram maybe second and Facebook page third. So if you're like emailing me or you're messaging me on Facebook, you're probably not getting a response, or you're not getting one for weeks at a time. But Twitter, if you send me a DM, I'll at least see it. I may not respond if it's a really weird or bad question, but I'll at least see it.
What do you use to find their personal email addresses? And the reason I ask is because I've tried a few tools recently, and I've noticed that if you find their Gmail and actually email that, it's a much higher chance of response.
Yeah, so I actually have my VA do this part, so I'm not even really sure what she uses, to be honest. But typically what I tell her is that a lot of reporters, they do want to be contacted. So they may have an email on their Twitter profile. They may have it on a lot of writers have it on their personal writing site. If you go to the contact page, you can also check their author profile page on, if they write for Forbes, you can check their author profile page, and sometimes they have the email there, or you can just test out a bunch of different lookup services. And when I'm doing it, I use this plugin. It used to be called, now it's called LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It used to be called Reportive. And if you type in someone's email, like if you work at AppSumo and you type in noah@appsumo.com, it'll actually populate it on LinkedIn if there's a matching profile. And so I use that a lot, and I'll just do like a quick guess, like noah@appsumo.com, noah.kagan@appsumo.com, or n@appsumo.com, or nk@appsumo.com, whatever like the 4 or 5 most common variations are. I'll guess it really quickly, and like maybe 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 times I'll figure it out.
Do you need to pay for that LinkedIn Navigator thing?
So I think they have a light version and a paid version, and I use the free version. It definitely doesn't, I think there's some, long story short, it used to work a lot better. It still works, but it's not as good as it used to be. Like it's working right now.
So I'm trying now a tool. I just met these guys and I was really impressed with the quality. It's called rocketreach.co. So there's a few of these other ones. This is one that I've like super well integrated. They have a lot of the data. It's been good. So rocketreach.co is a Chrome extension and a site. They have a free version for finding email addresses that I've really liked. All right, so and feel free to chime in like that. That was really helpful. So Haro, set up alerts, but also double bang them. Be like, yo, Instagram, Twitter, Gmail.
And I mean, one of the best pitches I ever got was from someone who kind of hit me up on all the platforms, but he did it in a way he was like, hey, I know you're really busy, but just in case you missed my email, I also wanted to send you a message on LinkedIn. And he did that on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And like the way he did it wasn't too annoying, because he was like kind of made it seem like, hey, I know you're so busy and so important and so cool, you may have missed my email, So I think the way you do it definitely matters.
I think one thing that was, I was talking with a recruiting firm last week, and I haven't recruited in about a year. I have strategies and systems, and I've done a lot of it over the years, but I just haven't done it in a while. And so they reminded me though, because I started doing it again recently, and they're doing it. And I was like, I'm not getting these responses. And their first question, which I thought was so astute, which is a great word, was how many times are you messaging them? I'm like, what do you mean? I like hit them up in the email. I send them a LinkedIn thing, and maybe Instagram or maybe Twitter, and they're like, that's it. They're like, we message people at least 5 times, and it was a good reminder, not to be annoying, right? It doesn't have to be 5, but most people, and it was a good reminder for myself that it's like it isn't the first reply. Like most replies, it's like 50% are going to be on the second, third, fourth, or fifth. And so you do have to be persistent, and people know if you're just spamming everyone versus you follow it the second time, they're like, oh, this person's a little more serious.
And I mean, I'll even give a good example. Like I typically follow up with people twice. So I use a Gmail plugin called Boomerang, and I'll set a little reminder for it to come back to me if they don't reply. And I think to really help people understand like just how busy people are, like I consider you my friend. I can also throw another blogger under the bus, my buddy, Sam, who runs Financial Samurai. He's also my friend. And I would say that most of the time when I email you two, you guys don't respond to my first email. It usually takes 1 or 2 follow-ups from me, and we're friends. So imagine if you're some random person or someone that you only met once and you're sending someone an email, like don't feel bad if they don't follow up with you. Like expect that it'll take 1 or 2 follow-ups.
Yeah, if I think it's like if you really want it. And dude, I replied to your first email, by the way. But it is like most people do one and they're like, all right, you don't really want it. A lot of times when I have job applications, I don't reply to the first time on specifically for a sales role to see if they do follow up. Let's go through a few of these other ones you said, because I do want to get into the live one, and I think that'll be really meaty. I'm just going to highlight, jump in if it's critical. Media badges, basically social proof you put on your site. This one, it seems like a more older school thing, but like the weekly news roundups, but I think it's a great way to conceptually what you're doing there, which I really like is, hey, person X, I'm promoting you, I'm helping you. I'm just telling you that I did it. I'm not asking for anything. And that's a way that you've kind of built relationships or started relationships versus, hey, here's something I need. So I really like that. It doesn't have to be a weekly news roundup. That's the Harry Campbell Rideshare guy model. But that's a great strategy. I like this last one. This is something we did at Mint a lot, which is you have a survey and you collect data. And I think there's a really interesting thing with every business, blogger, or software or e-commerce product, which is how can you take your proprietary information, whether it's a survey, whether it's sales data, whether it's analytics, and then turn that into content. That was the Mint strategy. But you're doing it with the survey and you send it out to all the bloggers or to the journalists you have relationships with. And that's a way to get a lot of write-ups about different things.
Yeah, so I mean, all of these reporters who we've been, featuring in our roundups at the end of the year, we do our survey and we, make a nice little report and send a nice little pitch and send it to all of them. And pretty much every year we've gotten at least 5 to 7 dedicated write-ups in top outlets, NPR, Forbes, whatever, about these surveys. And, we make it catchy. We, like this year, I know we have some interesting findings that, we know what they want to see, right? Like they don't want to just see like Uber drivers are making more money there this year. It's like, hey, Uber drivers are being treated like shit or whatever it is. Something that's more like headline grabbing.
Did you buy Uber stock?
No, I did not buy Uber stock, and I feel like the public markets have taken a real sledgehammer to the share price. So good thing I didn't.
I'm a bad investor. I'm like literally probably the worst investor you know, and I didn't even buy it. But if I did, then if I bought it, then you should short it. If I short it, you should. Anyways, and last one that you said, and then I want to jump into my friend's product. That we're going to do a live PR strategy on, and I think this will be helpful for everyone, is the snowball effect. I think that was pretty unique. I haven't heard anyone talking about that. Can you briefly describe that so others can copy you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess really what the snowball effect is that once you, and this is an area, like honestly, I think we need to get a lot better because we have so many requests coming in, not so many, but we have enough requests coming in where, if I only got 1 or 2 a month, I would be able to really track those and, follow up with them and all that. But we might get 15 to 20 or 20 to 30 in a big month, reporters reaching out to us. And so now what I do is I kind of leverage my contributors. So we have people on YouTube, we have people on the blog, and when I'm not available, or to be a little callous, like frankly, when the outlet isn't super big or I don't think is that worthy of my time, I'll send one of my contributors to go on my behalf. And so if you reach out to me for a media opportunity to say, hey, we want to talk to you about Uber's, ruling on this employment issue, AB5, I'll say, hey, I'd love to, but I'm actually busy at that time. I can have one of my senior rideshare guy contributors come on though. He's done media here, X, Y, and Z before. He'd be a great fit. And almost 99% of the time they say yes. So it's sort of like a good way to expand our media, presence, links, awareness, etc., without me even having to do it. Is that kind of what you were asking
Well,
about?
I think that's something that you can do with the media, and you can also do with your sales. It's something that we've used at AppSumo, and I've used it in the past, where instead of you selling, just connect to people that would, one, it's a great connection for them, and two, they're more likely to be an honest and more effective salesperson than you or I will ever be. So I love that, and it expands the leverage of your brand.
And I think it is important though that I'm like kind of the point person, right? Like if they just emailed me and someone random person from my team replied, it's not the same as me just like very quickly sending an intro email, or, you know, a lot of times I'll just copy them on the email so they can take it from there.
What made you want to come on the show to like, do you want a link? Is that all you wanted? I would have just given you a link. You didn't have to come on the show.
I mean, I think that a link would definitely be nice, but really what I want is sometimes like it's a little cheesy, but I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, like I was in the position of a lot of your listeners in the audience, like kind of trying to learn and like, how the hell are these guys doing it? How are they figuring it out? And now I've gotten to the point where like I'm the guy talking about it. And so it is like, I guess selfishly, it feels good to kind of like give back and inspire other people. And also, you know, I get a lot of people that ask me about this and I want a good place to point them to. So hopefully it benefits everyone.
Before we dive into the live case study around it, is there any other types of things around PR that we missed on, or that you think that's kind of like, hey, this is the foundational stuff people need to be thinking about? Like one I was thinking about is, how do you even know who you should go after for PR?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm helping a few of the companies that I'm an advisor, investor in. I'm helping them right now with a lot of this like early, kind of what I call early PR. This is like before you're hiring a PR team, kind of when you're trying to get the best bang for your buck. You're maybe trying to get 1 or 2 or 3 features or links or whatever it might be. And what I have found is that, let's say you're launching a new product. If you have a competitor in that space, see who else has covered them. And that's kind of like a good starting point if you're looking for a list of reporters. In the Uber space, for example, there's actually beat reporters at every tech outlet that anytime there's big news about Uber, they all write a story. So that's really easy. It's like you go and look up in Google, what's the last thing? So Uber just released a product called Uber Money last week. And, you know, they send it out to all these reporters under embargo. And then there's like 25 articles written about it that all say the same thing. But now you have a list of 25 reporters who all cover Uber. So if you have a product in that related space, you can find them. So those are just a couple things you can use to kind of start somewhere.
Right, so look them up on Google News, search maybe Twitter for keywords. A lot of times on major presses, you're right, they have their email address. Like this writer email address.
A lot of these reporters like don't want to miss out on scoops, right? And so they do have something public. It's just kind of like about standing out, right? So I think keep that in mind. Like they're looking for this stuff. So you just have to kind of put it in front of their face, remind them, you know, attack it from a few different angles. And I think that you will, and, you know, then of course it helps to have a good product. If your product sucks or your announcement sucks, then there's not much you can do.
Well, any other foundational things around PR that people starting out a business? And, you know, one thing that, it's funny, I'm asking the question, then I have a specific one. When should someone start PR? Right? Like if I have a software product, or if I'm starting an e-commerce store, or if I'm trying to be a social media influencer, do I want to be doing this stuff right away? Or do I want to wait till I've gotten my content strategy and my ad strategy and then do PR?
I think that it depends on the type of PR you're looking for. I mean, I think the stuff when you're going for real journalists, that's like not necessarily the big leagues, but it's once your service has seen, once you're starting to see some traction, and, you know, I call it like when you're ready to pour a little bit of gas on the fire, like when you're still trying to make sparks, you probably don't want to waste your time doing stuff like this. But if anything falls into your lap, I always recommend that you take it. Like no media is bad media. You never know what's going to get syndicated. You never know who is working at, you know, the College Times of Arizona, who's going to be at the New York Times in 5 years. So if something falls into your lap, definitely take it. But otherwise, you know, when you are kind of, you know, getting started, I don't think it needs to be a huge focus, but if you see some traction, you can look to it, or you can even look, you know, like there's PR, but there's also like PR from other bloggers, travel bloggers, you know, whatever, depending on the niche that you're in.
One thing that I hear from a lot of people, especially I was thinking of one of my best friends, Adam, you know, he has great things to say, but how can you approach getting on other shows? Just, you know, I kind of want to summarize that, because I think PR, there's getting on other podcasts and so forth. You know, there's different things. There's PR in magazines. There's PR on YouTube. Right. Maybe let's just do a quick on that. So Adam runs mybodytutor.com. How would you advise him, or if you were his, you know, he hired you for PR to get him on popular shows, and he coaches executives and business leaders in how to live a healthy lifestyle?
So I think definitely it would start with kind of making a target list of the shows that he wants to get on. So if he's doing my body tutor, I'm assuming this is something for, getting healthy or getting your body in shape or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not an avid listener of those shows on podcasts, but I'm sure that there's a bunch, let's say 5 to 10 top shows. And if he's going to go and try and get on those podcasts, like frankly, I think it's going to be super tough, to like have to cold reach out. But if there's a few that are a really good fit, I think that you can kind of start with that strategy of really, like kind of understanding like, hey, how big is this niche? Are these shows getting like millions of listeners? If so, like honestly, I'm not even sure what he can do off the top of my head other than know the right person who can intro him or meet him at a conference. Like I think for those really kind of cream of the crop shows, like you almost have to have some unique meeting with them. So like you have to meet them at a conference or you have to like get introduced in real life. Like I'm not really that confident that he would be able to even pitch them. Like I might advise him not to even like try and waste his time. Maybe if it's like a quick little email, but I don't know that for those really top cream of the crop shows, it's going to work like that.
Because that's what I'm wondering. Like, do you want to try to be the hot chick or the hot guy strategy where you do something that's so great that people are coming to you? Because I noticed a year and a half ago when I was working more on my YouTube and the podcast, that every time I asked a lot of people, let me get on your show, let me get on your show, let me get on your show. And it was just like, no, Noah, we don't want you on the show, even though I had unique things to say. But when I focused on just building AppSumo, building the different businesses that we're working on and helping customers, and I did, people would come to me. And I did, there was a few ones I did reach out and
I will say that I think it's a little bit of a combination. Like my strategy has really been to be like the guy to go to in the rideshare space. Like if you're Googling anything, if you're looking for it on social media or Facebook or books or Amazon, we're everywhere now. And when you really want to know about Uber and Lyft or drivers, like I want it to be super clear that I'm the one to talk to. So then when reporters, if there's a breaking story on Uber drivers, it's sort of like there's literally like no one else we can talk to. It's like, damn, we have to talk to this guy. I think that makes it a lot more compelling than when there's 25 different people that you can talk to about business marketing or, growing a YouTube channel or whatever it might be.
I don't think we really helped Adam enough. I know he's going to listen to the episode and he's like, oh shit, bro.
Well, I think that we're not done yet with Adam. So if he does want to get on shows, like realistically, I think that it's going to be tough to get on one of the top shows, depending on, the listeners and all that. But at the same time, like at a bare minimum strategy, like if I was trying to get on, let's say 15 podcasts, and I've actually done this before, let's say they're more like lower to medium, I would probably go ahead and do things like subscribing to their show, leaving a review for their show, following them on Twitter, and at some point letting them know that I'm a fan. I left a review for your show in iTunes. Doing things like that in order to kind of like build some type of little bond so that when you do hit them up later, that it's harder for them to say no. So I'll give you a good example with right now, there's a podcast and, this doesn't always work, obviously. And I would say if anything, it works less of the time than, or it works more, less often than it works. Hopefully we'll cut that out, but you know what I'm saying. And so if I was trying to reach out to this show, I believe it was called like The War on Cars, and I was pitching them on doing a rideshare episode. And I really wanted to get on this show because it doesn't have the biggest audience, I don't think, but it has like a very specific audience in like the public policy arena. And we're trying to do all this stuff with those like urban planner types. And so I actually listened to 2 or 3 of their shows. I left a review. I shared their shows on Twitter. And then I emailed the guy with a bunch of ideas that we could potentially talk about. And it's like, hey, I loved your show. They did a show on the old Car Talk guys. I was like, I loved your show on Car Talk. I used to listen to that with my dad when we were growing up. Anyways, here's who I am and here's why you should have me on. So it was like pretty clear that like, hey, I'm a fan of this show. I actually, am somewhat have something interesting to say. I'm somewhat legit. And the guy told me like, hey, we're not recording right now, but come back in October when we are. And so I just emailed him again the other day and we'll see what he says.
I like the approach. So it is kind of a similar strategy. I think number one, which is great, is okay, why am I doing this? So have some purpose. Number 2, create your target list. Number 3, spend like 3 months, give or take, taking in their stuff, figuring out like benefiting them and so forth, giving to them. And after 3 months, I do think, I've always joked, I've never had someone, when I was single, I never had someone come to my door randomly and knock and be like, hey, I'm a really good looking person. I want to be with you. That's literally never happened once. You have to actually put in that effort, and I do think you have to do the ask. Like, I've gone on some of the largest shows that I've ever been on. It wasn't just random. It's like I did intentionally work with them to make it interesting for them to be on it. And after helping them, like Tim or Pat Flynn, I've helped them a lot over the years where it made sense to do something together.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Pat Flynn is a good example because that's a show that I went on, but I pitched him many, 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 many times before I actually ever got on. And it wasn't until I actually met him in person at FinCon and we sort of started chatting. And even then, he still didn't have me on, even though, once he learned that I was a huge fan and had listened and read all his stuff over the years. And I was like the perfect case study for his podcast, but it still took a lot of kind of like pitching and prodding and like really following it. Like I was like a huge fan for years and pitched him multiple times and had a great story and had a great case study and met him in person before I finally like was able to get invited onto his show. So just to like put things in perspective.
Yeah, it takes time and persistence.
Yeah. It was like a lot of time, a lot of persistence. And I think though one thing I did learn from that is that like sometimes these unique meetings, these like you might meet someone at a conference. Like I just met at FinCon, I met this big YouTube blogger, Graham Stevens, right? Who's this big personal finance guy and he's growing a huge channel right now. And I really wanted to meet him at FinCon because he lives in LA. I live in LA. His business is booming and probably he's much bigger celebrity than me, but I wanted to meet him, and I did end up meeting him after his panel, but I was like one of many people meeting him, and I just kind of realized like this guy's probably never going to remember who I am versus like at FinCon I met Pat Flynn at a basketball game. I think you were actually there at that basketball game too. Yeah. That was the first time I met him, and he remembered my name, remembered my face, because it was like such a different type of meeting than kind of like one of many in the crowd. So I think like kind of standing out when you do meet someone or when you do pitch someone and looking for like those really unique opportunities is what my advice would be, especially for like the biggest and the best shows.
So let's go into the product. So the product, it's literally a friend of mine. His name is Alan Walton. He's like you, just a nice dude. I've known him over the years. We've hung out from time to time. Do you know Alan?
No, I don't.
Oh, he sounds like a nice dude. He's got a nice name. Yeah. You meet certain people, you're like, I want him to do well. So Alan is based up in Dallas. He runs spyguy.com, and he launched a product today. It's called the Scout Hidden Camera Finder. And so he sent me a link about it, and Alan and I have been friends and helped each other out. He's like probably bought stuff from appsumo.com. He's used Sumo for capturing emails and so forth and so forth. So he launched this product today, and it was on Product Hunt, and then we're texting about it. And what he says to me is, and it's so coincidental that we're having this chat today. He's saying, I'm having trouble getting anyone in the media to cover it, even though there's plenty of major stories about people finding hidden cameras in their Airbnbs. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear about them. So his thing is called the Scout Hidden Camera Finder, and it helps find all the hidden cameras in your Airbnbs, hotels, I guess restrooms.
This is actually an easy one for me. So what I would do right off the bat is I would have my VA go in and just do a generic search of anyone who's ever covered any story related to hidden cameras.
So let's do it live. Let's like really do it. It's because like
We're
you said the
doing it
VA,
live.
like I'm like that's like magic stuff. I'm like,
okay.
So where am I searching that?
Okay. So for example, if you go to Google and you start searching for stories about, I would probably type in keywords like hidden camera Airbnb, for example.
All right, I just did it. No, seriously, let's just do it real. All right, so hidden camera.
Right,
should I click on news or should I just look at the main articles?
Yeah, you definitely want news.
All right, news. So I just did it. And then do I need to...
And so now you have a huge list of articles, and you can also, one cool thing is you can actually sort it by time. So if you wanted, like, this is something where there's like a lot of coverage right now about, I haven't even read these articles, but there's like multiple coming up. So we could probably do a further sort by, like the last month, for example.
Oh, there's so many. All right, so I open all these stories up. All right, so I just opened up 5. I opened up like the ones that came from the last day.
So now that you have the ones that came from the last day, I think that, depending on the story, you kind of want to do a loose filter and make sure they're somewhat relevant. Like, I don't know, what is the first story you're looking at?
So this is on Forbes. It's how to find a hidden camera in your house or Airbnb or anywhere.
This sounds like a pretty good fit for us, right, with this product. And I'm reading this article now too, and it looks like he's got some tips. He says observation skills. So he's got some article about this. Like depending on how in depth you want to go, like I probably won't even read this article, but I'm assuming he does have some other app. He does have some other app in here. It's like Fing from iOS or Fing for Android. And so I think that you could potentially pitch him or, just send him an email, like share this article, for example, on Twitter. This guy's a journalist, so I'm assuming he's on Twitter. So you could share this post from your Twitter. If you had a blog on thespyguy.com, maybe you do like a little weekly roundup of news this week, and this is one of the articles that you feature. And then, at some point in the future, maybe in a week or a month, you email him, maybe probably sooner rather than later, but you could email this guy and let him know, hey, I read your article about finding a hidden camera. I actually launched this company that does something similar, and here's why my product is better or so much more awesome or whatever you want to say. But I do feel like for a pitch like this, where it's a little bit not spammy or generic, like you probably want to do a little bit more work and actually read this post and actually see how you could provide value by emailing him. Because I've done stuff like this before where we write about something and like take it to the next level or go more in depth, and people have actually added a link to their article after the fact. So, that's like what a potential benefit could be. And this article looks like it has 226,000 views since October 30th, which is around 6 days ago. And that's a lot of views. So you could not only get a good SEO link from Forbes, but you might actually get some traffic from it too.
All right, let's break that down one more time, because I think Alan's going to listen to this. He's like, no, tell me exactly what I need to do. It's like, Harry, I want to drink iced tea and get links. So so this guy's written an article. He's linked some things in here. He's mentioned a few products. So TJ, though, let's break it down. TJ's got Twitter. He's got LinkedIn. He's got a website. Okay. So we would do this for basically, let's just say, I don't know, 10, 20, 50 different people. I know you'd have this VA, but I'll be your VA today. You can call me your NA or something.
I mean, to be honest, though, I do pay a VA $5 an hour for this type of work. But yes, you can also do it yourself.
So the only thing that okay, so you're saying we know TJ, he's written about it. He's super wet for this kind of stuff. Yeah. Do we like tweet him right now and say, hey, I have this? Because I think what most people do, or I'm assuming what Alan did, is just tweet at him, hey, I got this product. Can you write about it?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that because this guy probably gets a million pitches like that. So what I would do is share this article. At a minimum, I would share this article on Twitter and at TJ and at Forbes. So from the Spy Guy profile.
Okay, so do that, number one. Do you message him or connect with him on LinkedIn?
I kind of like to do a little bit of a staggered approach so that he keeps seeing my name. So, you can do this in any way that you want, but I will never do it all in one day. So let's say I do this on the first day. The second day I go and follow him. So now he gets another little, if he's checking his notifications, he sees that I followed him. Third day, I maybe like a few like enough photos. I like a few of his tweets, maybe retweet a couple things. So now 3 to 4 days or, maybe over the course of a week, he's seen my name pop up a bunch of times. And, then, you could add him on LinkedIn too. I don't know that there's any one strategy, but at a certain point, you do need to email this guy or reach out to him and kind of make your ask, right? And I think in a situation like this, what you're going to be asking for is, now that you've established some relationship or some, kind of connection, you can, just sort of like give him a heads up on your product, right? Maybe it's something, if you're really bold, maybe you ask him to add it to this article or maybe just to consider it for a future article or something like that.
So one, I love the staggered approach. I think that's really creative. Two, a lot of people, what they're going to be doing, which is annoying, is what software do I need to use to track? And just use a Google spreadsheet. Like put the person's name in, put their link, and then I like what you're doing, which is columns, which is, so what you can do, which is sounds like maybe as simple, is like put the date you add them and then have columns that's like day 2, day 3, day 4 with the action that you're doing. And then literally every time you add someone, you can do it and then eventually pass it off to a NOAA assistant.
And I mean, frankly, this works with a lot more than just media and PR. I mean, this works with a lot of people that you're trying to develop a relationship with, and maybe you stagger it out over a further, timeline. But it's sort of like most people, if they meet someone, they add them on LinkedIn, and then maybe you don't hear from them in 3 months, and then you reach out to them in 6 months. What I would always rather do is, have a few different contact points so that in the future, if I do need something from them or I do reach out to them, they've sort of seen my name pop up a few times, basically.
That is very true. You start noticing people. Based on that. And so here's the part that I want to finish and hit home. So you've started giving at the end of the day. I think it is intentional and strategic, but you are helping them and focusing on them. How do you do the ask?
So I think in this type of situation, I'm going to send an email to TJ and sort of lay all those things out, like kind of the things that I gave. And then maybe there's, some type of ask in there around, like, I guess, like I said, if I'm really bold, maybe I ask for him to consider this, adding this to his article, adding this product to his article, because looks like he's a contributor for Forbes, so he may be able to go in after the fact and update the article if it's really valuable. Or maybe if he's covering stuff like this in the future, maybe you look at his, I think what I would do too is, just give him a heads up on this product. And it doesn't, a no doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the world. But let's say he replies to my email and says, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm not going to cover it at this time, but I'll think about it for the future. Maybe I go to his profile then and see what other type of stuff he's covering. Is he covering all new products? Is he covering, kind of see what he's looking for, and then kind of keep that in mind for the future, maybe when I have a better pitch for him. So it could even be like setting him up for the next pitch.
Well, the only thing I was concerned with for Alan in this product is that it's time sensitive. So maybe if he knew he was launching it today, or he knew he was launching it sooner, he should have started this a month ago.
Yeah. So that might be the ideal thing, because that's one of the things that I tell a lot of people. Like, reporters love getting exclusives, right? Or being the first to see something, or, getting being the first to cover it, even if it's something that's, like I guess the psychological nature for reporters. Like, if they're the first to cover something, that like always makes them feel good and, they get the scoop on it, right? So you can imagine if you did this a month in advance and you emailed TJ like, hey, I saw you covered, like how to find a hidden camera in your house or Airbnb anywhere. I actually have a product coming out that's not on your list. It's never been covered before. And I think it's going to be really interesting for your viewers. That might be something that he's more likely to cover once you've done all that other stuff for him.
I like it. I'm trying to think. I think, Alan, you're good, dude. So one, you got to give it a week or two of really helping these people out, starting this a little bit sooner. And then I still think the ask is a hard ask, because I personally like asking for things if I think it's good for the other person and it's not cheating or dishonest.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be clear. Like, this is a hard ask. Like, I think we're going to have a pretty low success rate with something like this. But, we are just thinking about this literally. Like, you didn't tell me about this product before we got on. We're thinking about it off the top of my head. So I'm sure if we put some more thought into it, or Alan put some more thought into it, he could probably make a little bit better pitch. Or like you said, plan it out, even one day in advance or 1 week in advance, right? It doesn't need to be months in advance. But, I think that you actually brought up a good point. Alan launched this product. Now he's like, okay, how do I promote this? What he really should be doing is like launching the product and thinking about promotion ahead of time. So what I noticed is that a lot of people reach out to me. There's like 1 million Uber driver books out there, like people writing about stories and this and that, and they'll email me once it's live and ask me to promote it. And I'm like, why the hell would I promote this random Uber driver book? But if they would have reached out to me while they were writing the book and said, hey, would you like to include a quote? Or even better, like, hey, I saw you had this quote in one of your articles and I'm going to use it in my book if that's okay with you. I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is say yes. I'm going to be in some random book. I don't even care if it's big or small. Why would I ever say no to that? Then when the book comes out, they ask me for their review or to come on my podcast or whatever it might be. Now I'm like, damn it, I'm in this book. It's going to be pretty hard for me to say no to this, right?
Yeah, it makes you look good.
Yeah, it makes me look good. I'm in the book, right? So,
but I think people hear that advice and then they send you a crap email. They're like, "Hey, Harry, can you give me a quote so you can really promote my shit later?" And I don't really care what you say. It's got to be sincere. Otherwise, people can see through that.
Right. It has to be sincere, but I think you also have to think about like kind of what's working in your industry, right? Like I think you're very well versed in the online marketing industry where a lot of these tactics are like pretty spammy. But that's one of the things I love about studying other industries is because you can like this roundup strategy is something that a lot of personal finance bloggers were doing back in the day. And I don't even know if they're still doing it, but and it was like kind of spammy back in the day, right? Because it was just like what you were describing. It was like, oh, cool, I got featured in some random personal finance, my sense this, sense that. But in my industry, in the rideshare industry, like none of these journalists are getting tweets every week that say like, you've been featured on the Rideshare Guy. Thanks for keeping us updated. You know what I mean?
You just winked. You guys can't see it, but you just winked.
Must have been involuntary. I didn't even realize it.
I mean, I think sometimes there's a balance where you have to figure out where the highest leverage activities are, right? Because you can go get on 1,000 different shows or get 1,000 different journalists. At the end of the day, that might not move the needle for your business. So I think there's a component of building up, like as a fire, starting with smaller ones and building up practice to use larger ones. But also, if you're trying to get on shows or if you're trying to build relationships or you're trying to get press or whatever types of things, either how can you scale it so what you're doing, which is really clever, is now you're emailing 300 people, getting 300 things instead of one by one. So that makes a difference.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll even, if we have time, I'll even share one quick thing that we're sort of developing or working on right now, and it's unlinked mentions. And so what we're realizing right now is that we're getting so many media coming to us that a lot of times these guys are not linking or not quoting. And I always ask for it up front in a nice way, but sometimes they don't do it. And we kind of have just been, no link, no traffic. And now what we do is we actually search for these on a weekly basis using Google Alerts. And we also follow up. So if I took a call with a reporter today, I add them to a spreadsheet and we go check their profile in a week, or we send them an email in a week to see if that article went live and to see if we got a link. If we didn't get the link, then we'll email that reporter directly or their editor or, whatever email we can find for the publication and ask them for a link back. And I believe like the exact verbiage we use is something where it's like, hey, we want to make sure that your readers can find our site if they want to learn more about what we're doing or something like that. So it's not just like, hey, link to us. Like what I want is a link, to be frank, but we sort of say it in a way where it's not like so demanding.
I was just thinking, I do some dick, hear a dick move I do? Because I get emails, you get these emails, hey, can you add, I saw you wrote this article on email marketing open rates. Can you add my link to it? And because it's helpful and blah, I'm like, yeah. And so if I'm in a bad mood, which I haven't been in one in a while, I'll say I added it. And then they email back, they're like, hey, I don't see it in the article. And I'm like, oh, it's because of GeoIP. And then it's just like, I do that for a while and then I just stop responding. And it's not, I know it's not nice. I know it's not nice.
That is, I just ignore those.
I know. Once in a while, I just like, I'm having too much fun.
Yeah, you have more fun than I do in business, I think, but I'm learning from you, so I appreciate it.
One, you should never listen to my advice. That's my first piece of advice. And two, business should be fun. I think we're not having enough fun in our businesses. And generally, if you're having fun, your customers are going to have fun too. Well, I think the thing that to summarize a lot of this is that you're investing in the other person, and after you've invested, you ask for a little bit of a return. If I had to keep it really simple, you're saying, here's the people I want to work with or be friends with or partner with or get on their shows. Here's all these different ways that I can find out when it's happening and ways that I can make sure I'm responding to them. And then over time, you do say like, hey, here's some stuff I'm doing that I think is relevant that you may want to benefit your audience or your writing or your partnerships or whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also looking out for opportunities, like kind of putting yourself in the best position to get a yes. Like one of the I don't know how common or well known this strategy is, but like when people have new products or services coming out, like they're a lot more likely to say yes to doing a podcast interview when they have a new book coming out. And you've probably heard that's why, whenever anyone has a new book, they go on like everybody's show, right? So I think that it doesn't need to be that specific strategy, but I kind of call it like topical timing or topical marketing. So like, for example, with our buddy with this spy camera product, like I would set a bunch of alerts for, like any stories that are going to be really big about, like, I don't know, cameras being found or, because if you can hit them really quickly while it's topical, I think that you have a big advantage there, kind of like, because this is really what this is marketing. Like you're marketing your product or you're marketing yourself or you're marketing your service. And so if you can time it around an event where someone is going to be more likely to say yes to covering it or more likely to switch to this product or whatever it might be, then you just increase your chances for success.
I think for Alan with the product too, it's like, is this generally better for people? Like, is it, I think with marketing a lot of the times or sales or partnerships, it's like, yes, we always care about ourselves. Everyone's selfish, but how is it really helping the other person? The other thing I was thinking for Alan for PR is that like he should go find he should go literally find cameras in hotels or Airbnbs and create something that is worthy of people wanting to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's sort of where you kind of have to go back to that slider and think about like, hey, where am I going to get kind of like the highest return for my time, but also, like where am I going to stand out the most with my pitch or this activity that I'm doing? And I do think generally, like there's no shortcut for a lot of these things. Like if you just go and cold email 50 people, you're probably going to get 0 responses. But doing something like what you described, like actually going out there and finding something and, like giving a heads up to a reporter or something like that would be at the other extreme. But I think that it would, work really well. And it's like very unique and like could be even, like a repeatable strategy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think for me, one thing I've looked at that I think is relevant for the show and what we're talking about, and I like what you said, is that this is a system that applies to basically working with other people at the end of the day. And like from being on a show to, Adam wanting to be on a podcast to links and so forth. One of the things that I'm trying to get better at, or working on getting better at, is looking at my calendar on Sunday, and I realize how many of the activities am I doing are actually like high value activities. And if you think about it, building relationships that are going to benefit you at a later point in time is probably one of the highest ROI things you could be doing. And what I notice is that like I don't even actually have any of that in my calendar. It's very random when I'll find someone I want to meet or that wants to meet me and so forth. But I need to get better at planning actually like, all right, every Thursday for 1 hour, let's make a list of people you want to meet or companies you want to connect with, and actually be a little bit more intentional for the future versus, as Alan's doing, just doing it today like most of us do, including myself.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I think what you're describing right now is super high level, next level, but it's also like insanely valuable. And even like doing these little interactions, like these little check-ins. I just read a book. It might have been recommended on your show. Was it Giftology? Was that recommended on your show?
I think so.
I know I heard it's I read it, and like even stuff like that, like one of our top affiliates right now that were, basically paying us the most amount they're our top affiliate right now. I added them to a spreadsheet where we check every month of just like potential gifts that we can give out. And like, I don't know what I'm going to give them or when, but it's like, hey, I'm now thinking about them, and like, they're going to get a little gift from me at some point, in addition to like all our normal communication and me asking for, like, I just asked them to sponsor a new podcast. And so they're going to get like all the normal stuff, but I'm like looking for these other opportunities. Like if I haven't checked in with them in a month or 2 or 3 months, I want to check in with them. So I'm an advisor for 6 or 7 companies. And in Asana, I just have a recurring task. Some of these companies that I'm working more closely with are monthly. Some of them are bi-monthly. Some of them are quarterly. But all I do is just send them a check-in email, or I reach out to them to grab lunch or whatever it might be, just to kind of keep that relationship going.
So I'm literally doing right now, I'm going to put an hour every week moving forward on those Thursdays where I dedicate to connecting with people I want to be connecting with, or thanking people I'm already working with. Harry, I've actually got to go to Jewish conversion class, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing exactly how you do your strategies. I think there's a lot of juice. Do you want people to go check out your podcast or your book? Do you want them to send you iced tea? What would you like?
Well, I think if they ever see me in person, definitely. I prefer beer over iced tea, but I think the iced tea is the key to your heart. But if they are interested in kind of probably more the rideshare mobility topics, I do a lot of like industry topics on my podcast. And then if they have any interest in what we're up to around Uber or Lyft, you've got the site, therideshareguy.com, or pretty much just type the rideshare guy into any little search box and I'll pop up.
I love it. Harry, man, you closed me. You got the link. I want to get you a shirt. Maybe I'll make you a shirt. I got the link. Okay,
I like that. I haven't got the link yet, but if I don't, you'll be hearing from my VA.
Dude, if he messed up is if I put you in there, but I don't actually link it just to mess with you. I'm like, hey, I had this guy on the show. He talks about PR.
Yeah, no name, no link, no nothing, and that would be a full circle.